welcome back to the Quilter's Candy Shop, where you will find sweet treats for the discerning quilter. My name is Carrie and I'm the owner of the Quilter's Candy Shop, and we are glad that you are here with us today. Today we are going to be continuing on with our rainy day quilt sew along. The only thing required to join us in our sew along is for you to purchase a rainy days quilt pattern, and you can buy this on our website, www.thequilterscandyshop.com. That's SHOPPE, because we just had to be too cute and make it difficult. So the Quilters Candy Shop, SHOPPE.com, and you can buy the pattern, and then you can use your own fabrics. If you would like a kit, this fabric is no longer available, the original, but we can find lovely substitutions for you or help you choose some from your own stash. All right, well, let's get started on step number 2 in our rainy days quilt sew along. Hopefully you got your homework done, and if you didn't, that's okay. Just try to catch up and we'll just keep moving forward. If you didn't get it done, no pressure. These videos are going to stay up, so you'll be able to do it anytime that fits your schedule. That's the beauty of these sew-alongs. Okay, so if you got your homework done, you have all of your background pieces cut out and labeled well. For today, what I want to talk to you about is color placement. If you're using the original fabric line, Hollyhock Lane by Poppy Cotton, then you have these exact fabrics, and if you want to, you can make your quilt exactly like this or exactly like the cover. If you have a different random color of fabrics from your own stash, or if you picked up our country blend, then you're going to have to figure out where the colors go all on your own. But that's why I'm here to help you. So it's all up to you. But if you're going to do a bit of changing, then you want to make a good plan for your fabric. So here's what I recommend. I would make a photocopy of your entire pattern. So every block that you're working on will have its own page. That way you can keep it with your fabrics. That's what I do. I keep it on this design board, and the fabrics I'm going to use for this I just lay out like this so I can get a good look. I'm going to have these 4 reds to make the hearts. Now, I haven't decided yet if I'm going to make the hearts all one or if I'm going to put 2 fabrics in there, but I know I'm going to use these 4 fabrics for this heart. So I'm going to set that aside. So the next flower, I can just put this one here, and then I know I want to make the little posy with the 4 petals. I know I'm going to make it out of these blues, so I put these 4 blues and this green that I like with it. Won't these be really cute in blue, and they'll look like Texas blue bonnets? I'm just going to set that aside. So now you can see how these boards start to become useful. I'm just going to stack these like this, and I'm going to go through the whole pile and sort out my fabric. So for example, I have the next flower is this tulip, and I know I want these to be yellow. So there's going to be 3 of these. So I've got 3 yellows and a green, and I'll just do all the stems the same. That's another place where you can make some changes. You can have the stem be 1 and all the leaves. You can mix and match the leaves so all the leaves have different colors on it. It's completely up to you, and that's where your creativity comes in, and so you can make yours special. I'm going to keep stacking up my fabrics here. So basically you keep going through until you get all the fabrics sort of separated and you have an overall plan. Okay, so now all I have to do is take my fabrics, stack them up, and we are ready to go and start cutting out our fabrics. All right, see you at the sewing machine. Okay, now that we have all of our color placement decided, we are going to start working on our first block. And the first block we're going to be working on is flower number 4, and that's our heart flower. I'm going to be making my hearts out of these four nice barn reds that go with my country setting. And I'm using this soft celadon green for the stem and the leaves. So the first thing to do is to get this cut, and then we'll come back and sew the first block together. Okay, so I've got all my pieces cut out. One thing to note on the pattern is that we are going to be making 4 of the heart blocks. So the instructions give you the cutting for 1 block, but we need 4. The instructions say to cut 2 of piece B for the leaves, but you're making 4 flowers, so you will actually need 8 of B. Same thing with C. You need 4 stems. So it says cut 1 of the stems, C. You actually need to cut 4. And then the same with the backgrounds. You need 16 each of R and S, 8 of I, and 8 of H. So once you have those all collected together, we'll start sewing. Okay, here is one of the heart blocks. I went ahead and did one so you can see what it looks like finished and the anatomy of the pieces that we're going to be putting together. So we've got the 2 large rectangles here for our hearts, the 2 small rectangles for the leaves, and the 1 long stem and the background pieces. So let's put another one together. Okay, the first part of the instructions says to take your fabric A. So this is one of the hearts we're going to make. I'll move my little marker right there and open it up. And here are the 2 lobes of the heart. The next thing is we're going to be doing these upper corners that make the top of the heart. And those are using piece R. So you're going to have a piece R for this corner, one for this corner, one for this corner, and one for this corner. If you are not using the diagonal seam tape, then you will need to mark the diagonals on your pieces. So gather up those R squares. And grab a small ruler and your marking pen. You will save a lot of time and effort by not having to mark the diagonal on your pieces by using the diagonal seam tape. So you'll get to see how this is used, and then if you decide you want some for next week, let me know because we are sewing a lot of angles. So take the wrong side of your fabric and a small ruler that's easy to handle, and we're going to mark a line from this corner to this corner. So we line up the ruler right on the 2 points here, and we use our disappearing ink pen or a friction pen or water soluble, whatever you have. And we're going to do that on all 4 of these pieces. So as you can see, this is going to take a lot of time throughout the course. So that's the last time I will be marking because I am using the diagonal tape. To make the top here, we're going to have the 4 R pieces go up in this corner like that. You want to make sure you've got your angle going the right direction in order to get this to flip out like that and make the edge of the heart. So give that a little look-see, a little test before you sew. All of our seam allowances are a scant 1/4 inch, which means you're going to put your needle just on the inside of the line like that, and that's going to make enough space for this fabric to flip over the top of the thread and then come out perfect. So When you're using the friction marker, you can see you're going to sew right on that line all the way down. And that makes it really easy. So we'll just do that this time. Scant means you can see, can you see? I'll get it all the way in there. The needle is one little thread away from that line on the inside. Just like that. Now we're going to do the other one. It goes on the opposite side and the opposite direction. You just line up your edges. Make sure those points are right to the corners, like that. Now, on this one, I'm using my line right here. Instead of watching the needle go up and down on the line, I'm going to watch and make sure that this is all lined up with this center line. Again, you're going to use a scant seam allowance, which means I'm going to put my needle right down the side of that line. Just like that. This is my little cottontail, and it's a little thread saver, and I'll just run it through like this. That gets my thread ready to go for the next bit of sewing. All right. Here's my two pieces. It doesn't really matter if you do the two outside or the two inside first. You just want to make sure you're doing both the same. All right, we'll take it over the ironing board. I always set my seam allowance, my seam first. If you put a little heat on your seam before you press it open, that will tighten up the thread and help pull everything back into shape that might have got distorted while you were pulling it through the sewing machine. One of these you have to press out like that, and make that behave a little bit. I'm just going to stick my clapper on there. And then the other one, you have to press the opposite direction, which means turning this whole amount under like that. And I'll show you the difference here in just a second. Just leave that there to cool. Okay. So if you look on the opposite side, this one, the seam allowance is going up to the top. And on this one, the seam allowance is coming down. If these are inside seams, this is going to make your seam allowance go in the opposite direction, so you can make these points match up perfectly. You'll see that when we get to that step. So now that these are cool, you just check and make sure that you're happy with this seam allowance. I could, if I wanted to, take this back out to make that move over again, but there's not enough difference here. That's all going to be in the seam allowance. I don't think it's going to cause a problem, so I'm going to leave it as is. So you're going to take your handy scissors and cut 1/4 inch away from the seam allowance. Just like that. And this flips back up. And then this one gets cut 1/4 inch away from the seam. Just make sure you don't cut through your fabric. Only cut the extra part. Okay, that's the first step on our hearts. Now we're going to do the inside. So the inside is done in just the same way. We're going to put one here, making sure we've got our angle in the right spot. And the same here, just like that. We'll pick this one up. Don't forget to always use a scant 1/4 inch. When you have this diagonal line here, you can put the point. Here it's right on the line, but here it's just offset of the line, and that makes a scant 1/4 inch. And the same with this one, it goes in the opposite direction. Just like that. I'll bring my little cottontail around here. And then we'll trim these off. Like that. And now we're going to press these 2 angles. Okay, we're going to set the seam again. Now this one, the seam allowance is going out. So on this one, we want the seam allowance to come down. So again, I'm flipping it all the way over like that. Put it here, is that better? Okay, put that on there. And then this one, this is going down on this one, so we want it to go out on that one. I think that's one of the flaws of this pattern. It doesn't really show any of the directions for the pressing, and it makes such a difference if you have things pressed in good order. So now you can see, if you look to the back, the seam allowance on this one is coming down, and on this one is going up. So we're going to trim that off, just like that. Making sure not to catch the back side, just the 2 extra bits from the seam allowance. And now this one, just going to open this up like this. Great. And there you go. Now you can start to see the top of the heart. Next, we have to make the large angle that goes here that's going to create the heart. That's by using 2 squares of H. And they fit perfectly right here at the bottom of the heart. This is probably the biggest size you want to use with the diagonal seam tape. You will probably want to mark this one regardless if you're using the seam tape or not. So I'm going to go ahead and mark mine. This. Okay. And like that. I'm almost out of ink in my ink pen. I've got another one. It's always good to have enough supplies. All right, we're going to come over here. Again, this is the extra side, so that's going to be the scant. We're going to put the needle right up next to the line. Just like that. There's one. So see right here, I just can follow that point right up the line, and look, it's just on the side, which makes it a scant. And perfect. Bring my cottontail forward. Trim that. And we'll press. Okay, set the seam. And then again, the same thing. You want these 2 going the opposite because we're going to make this point match. So on this one, I'm just going to fold this one down. Look at that. Perfect. Just press that over. There we go. And now this one, we have to make go the opposite. So we're not just folding it over, we're folding the whole amount under. So hopefully you can see the difference, because that will make quite the difference in your piecing. All right, I'm pretty happy with that. So I'm going to go ahead and trim this off. Get that 1/4 inch away. And I'll just let this one rest while we're doing this one. See how nice and flat that clapper makes everything lay? I just love it. All right, there it is. And ta-da! Look at that. It's a cute little heart. Now we just have to sew this together. Now, you've noticed so far that I have not been using any pins. I'm not really a pin person. You feel free to use pins if you like. But in this place where we're going to make this point match and this point match, I am going to use some pins. All right, and here is the trick. This is why we did our seam allowances like this. When you put this one over, and you have your two pieces lined up, the bottom one has the seam allowance going this way, making like a little ridge right here. And this top one has the seam allowance going this way, making a little bit of a ridge over here. And when you line these two up, you can feel when those two are what they call nested. You nest those two edges together right here, and you can see how perfectly they're going to line up. So we're going to stick a pin in this end right here. All right, and then the same thing here. Now this one just doesn't happen to fall exactly correct. So you're going to have to feel with your finger when those get pulled right up next to each other and make that whole seam straight, just like that. Okay, so there we go. Now we're just going to sew a scant 1/4 inch all the way down there. Line that up on the 1/4 inch. Do not sew over your pins. That will hurt the timing of your sewing machine. All right. All the way down. Just like that. There we go. They're going to come out perfect. And look, what we've got is our heart. We have a few little tips as far as finishing this off. So let's go to the ironing board. So as usual, set this seam. And then when we open this up, we're going to look right here. Look at the point came out just great right there. And right there. Good job. So Some people press left or right. In this case, when you've got these bulky areas, I recommend that you press this open. You're going to be much happier with the end result, how flat it will lay, like this. And when you have other parts start connecting to all of this, you're going to want to watch, be careful with your seam allowances. So just give this a little bit of a touch up here. And we use the point of the iron, just run right down the center. You don't have to go all the way to the end because you've got this flap here and you don't want that to go the wrong direction. So you can just take this and turn it around and run that point this way, because we want this seam allowance to go this way. Like that. Once you have it pressed open good enough, then I put it on the front side like this. That really gets, then you can get the tip of your iron right in the seam allowance and everything presses flat. And you don't have all your seam allowances trying to abandon ship and go the wrong direction. This is also a good time for a little bit of spray starch. I prefer Mary Ellen's Best Press, but I'm out. So I got this at Walmart, and you know what? It is really quite a nice, this Faultless Premium. It is quite a nice luxe finish starch. Very light, and it really makes a beautiful finish. So there's those. All those seam allowances go in the right direction. Now you don't have to use starch, and really I try not to use too much starch, but when you get to this point, there's something so satisfying about that nice flat finish. Okay, so you can see we got our heart done, just like this one, and now we are going to make the stem and leaves for this heart flower. So we're now making this part of the pattern. And as you can see, we need 4 S's, and we need 2 C's, 1 B, and 2 I's. Gather those together, and I'll meet you back here. All right, so here are the pieces we need, like this. Okay, and this time I am not going to mark the diagonals, and I'm just going to use the diagonal tape. And that way you can see how much quicker it is when you don't have to mark all the diagonal lines. So the first thing we're going to do is lay out, just for a rough layout, where the leaves go. These 2 leaves are opposite, so you have to get right the opposite side and the opposite side of the 2 opposite sides. This is probably the most difficult part of this whole particular block. We started with the easiest block first. Now this is the hardest step, because it's very easy to get these on the wrong side and then your leaves don't go the right way. So we want to make sure we get this part right. So we're going to take the right hand leaf and the right hand square. When we're looking at it on the pattern, we can see the right hand side and the right hand side, and this is on the bottom. So we'll put that there, and we'll go over and we'll sew the diagonal. So now I can just go right to sewing. I stick the tip up there, and I stick my point on the line, and I can just go to town. I can leave that one there, and let's get the left hand side. So this is the left hand leaf with the left hand side, and if we look on the pattern, that is the left corner is at the bottom. So we'll put this right here. come over, and we're going to sew right down here of that red line, and I can just slide right on down. So this is the right leaf, and this is the left leaf, and they are just opposites. So that's perfect. Set the seam. Now in this case, we're going to push the seam out for both. We don't have to do opposites. Okay, look at that. Beautiful. I'm very happy with how this lines up here. So we're just going to trim it. Open that up, and 1/4 inch away from the seam allowance. Okay. Far right, far left. Now we're going to do the same thing, but the opposite corners, just like this. Get these done. Okay, let's press it. Set the seam. And then press out. Just set the clapper on here for a little bit. Beautiful. Look at that. Okay, again, these came out perfect. So I did better with using the diagonal seam tape than I did by using the line, which anytime it's more accurate is better. Now we're going to trim it. One. Just make sure you don't catch that back. You want to make sure you only cut the extra. Wonderful. And look how perfect. Now next, we need to put the leaves to the space. Super simple. You're going to put these to match up along here and sew a scant 1/4 inch there. All right. Look how fast this goes together. Okay, and there's our leaf for one and leaf for the other, like so. This is another place where you could press this open if you wanted to. But in this case, it wants to naturally go this way, so that's what we're going to do. So first, set that seam. It's easy to forget on this one because you want to get right to that pressing. Here we go. That, very nice. And then we'll press this one. Let me do it like this. Oh, doesn't that look nice? We're going to make very happy little leaves. Now we're just going to add this in. In this case, with this 1 inch strip, it's going to be a little bit more persnickety, so I am going to use pins. So we're just going to flip this over on this side. Match it exactly at the top. Pin it in place. Match it exactly at the bottom. And pin it in place. When that goes through the machine, it's going to pull that all nice and tight and flat. Okay, let's go to the machine for one more tip. Most people, when they pick this up to put this through the machine to sew this edge, they're going to put this smaller piece on the top and run it through the machine like this. The problem is you have these little flaps of seam allowance. The better idea is to run it through the machine like this, because this piece is all flat. There's nothing to get hung up on. So it can go down here. It doesn't matter that it's smaller. It's pinned in place. And now when it goes through, you're going to be able to manage your seam allowances better. So don't be afraid to put the smaller piece on the bottom whenever you've got a smooth edge. So let's run this one through. Make sure both edges of both pieces of fabric are lined up nice and straight. Now, see, when you get to here, you can assist that seam allowance to do the right thing and not be a hooligan. Just like that. I'm not going to press this right now. I'm just going to add the other piece right on. I'm just going to put this on the top. Line it up exactly up here at the top and pin it like that. Line this one up exactly at the bottom and pin it. And now the sewing machine's going to pull those all together. And we're going to leave this seam allowance on the top. So I want to make sure that you get these two pieces of fabric lined up right next to each other. And see here, now you can fix that. If that were underneath, you wouldn't see it. And then you'd have to do some unsewing. Nobody likes to do unsewing. And look at that. So cute. All right, let's press it out, because now we get to the fun part where you get to see what's happening. So on this one, I'm not going to set the seam because I'm doing two seams at once. So we're just going to trust that it's going to behave. Just like that. Let me do it again from this side. And once you have that pretty well pressed, we're going to turn it over just like we did with the heart and put the seam allowance down and really give this a good pressing. So one way to do that is to use the weight of the iron and give this just a little bit of tug. Can you see that change right there? We want that to spread out just a little bit, or it might end up being too narrow. And then here, like this, we'll press out right here. Now there's always a lot of detail to think about. So we did this easy block first so that we could have some nice, good results. As the next blocks go along, there's going to be more complicated parts. So we're going to increase the difficulty with each step. Let's get this puppy finished off. We're going to put the top down like that. We're just going to line everything up as best as we can. And again, because we have this point, we want to line up in the middle of here, and we have these two edges down here. We're going to use pins. The first thing is I want this point to be in the middle of this stem. We're going to line that up right there. And then I want these two edges to come together, just like so. And this one. Right, look at that. So we'll sew that. We're going to sew with this side down because there's only one seam, whereas on this side we have all of this seam allowance, and we don't want that to get flipped up the wrong direction. So we're going to manage our seam allowances on this side. And let's take a look. Oh, it's darling. Now, this is another place where you could press this open, but we've got this V seam here is forcing this up anyway. Yeah. Yeah. So we're going to, you see how it wants to lay this direction? So we're going to just help it along. Right, like that. And then put it on this side. And here we're going to use a little bit of spray starch again, just to hold that all in place. It really doesn't take hardly any starch, so don't drench your projects. Don't drench your quilt blocks. There you go. And there we are. Perfect. Okay, that's it. We've got all of our 4 hearts done, and look how sweet they are. I just love them. And the nice thing is you can see right away the size is consistent, which means we have good seam allowances. And you can also tell that from the back. Look how nice and even all those seam allowances are. Everything looks good. I love it when the back of your quilt looks just as good as the front. That means you've got good seam allowances, and that's going to make everything go together much better. But what really made them go together the best was our diagonal seam tape. Putting this on your sewing machine so you don't have to mark all those lines and you can just move so quickly from one piece to the next. It really saves a lot of time. So you can get this at our website, The Quilter's Candy Shop, SHOPPE.com, and pick yourself up one of these. The last thing you have to do is to square these up and trim them up. So this is 8.5 by 16.5. Make sure they're all the same. Set these aside and we will start on the next flower next week. Get your homework done and let's make something sweet.